Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this second episode of Podcast Times with Tom, Kyle, and myself, Jack. This evening we will be looking over religion, fact or fiction, cultural changes, and colonialism. So some very interesting topics. I'm sure everyone will be absolutely livid at home once they hear this, but thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Right, so let's start off the season with religion. It's quite a big thing, isn't it? Really, religion, especially with terrorism now. I mean,
oh crikey! It's a real wormhole.
It's the idea that sort of religion is responsible for all of this. I can't remember who it was who said that religion was responsible for all the atrocities in the world, but that is quite a strong statement. So I was wondering, Kyle, Tom, what are your opinions on religion? Is it fact or is it fiction?
Fiction.
Well, it's not my place to say.
Fiction.
Because I wasn't raised Christian. I went to a Christian school. I wasn't raised Christian. I wasn't raised any sort of religion really. I was sort of raised to believe what I want to believe. And there are certain elements of religion that I think, I might not believe it, but I can see why religion has been a major driving force in why man is now a civilized society. Because without religion, we would still be bashing rocks together and go, ugh! Because
I would agree with that, definitely. I mean, religion is something that generally brings people together, makes people better. I mean, if there's nothing to strive for, then what's the point in being civilized?
Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like that is all well and good, but it's not real. It's a good concept and a good moral concept.
Well, again,
it's something people don't have.
But a belief in a god system, I just feel like, is extremely impractical and not real. Because, how is everyone born into the perfect religion? You're born into the one religion that goes to a god, but everyone else is born into a religion which is going to hell. You were born to the right god, and everyone is born to the right god.
Well, that really depends on what religion you're talking about. It's a very broad, because obviously there are so many religious beliefs in the world, and it depends what kind of Christian you're talking about. Because there are some Christians who believe that if you are a good person, you will go to heaven, no matter what you believe
in. I mean, there is the theory, or the idea that you have to be baptized to get into heaven. I think this is something that generally, the concept heaven and hell really does make people strive to be better. Nobody wants to go to a bad place, do they?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, God, I wouldn't want to again. Hello?
I'm sorry, mate.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, technical issue there. It is something generally that does make people feel better about themselves. If you speak to anyone who's religious, they're very much set in their ways, and I think you'll find that you get a higher quality person who's religious generally. I mean, if somebody's interested in that, they generally just go around and think that there's only one life, they can do what they like. I mean, it's an issue that makes people feel better, I imagine. And we shouldn't knock people for their religion at the end of the day. I mean, you believe something, as long as you don't believe that blowing up everyone's fun, then you should live your life how you want.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's, for me, I'm not a religious person. I'm agnostic. I don't believe that there is a heaven, hell, whatever. But I don't really believe in any of them, because I just think, well, whatever happens, happens. But I will agree 100% that religion has been a massive, massive force of good in the world.
Yes, but that brings us on to the issue of it has been misinterpreted, for example, with the Islamic State, and it has been used as evil. I mean, especially in the recent Easter Sunday attacks in Sri Lanka, we see that there are people who take a very twisted view on life, their religion, and believe that they have to do that action to glorify their religion. And I think it's education that needs to happen through religion, which is crucially important. Otherwise, you end up with a bunch of terrorists who go around killing people.
Yeah. Religion these days can be either a force of very, very much sort of good. It can be a very good force. It can give people meaning in their life. It can help bring people out of depression and stuff like this, and it can give something for people to work towards. But in the same vein, it can also be something for people to fight over and divide people over. But it's a really sort of individualistic thing, where some people perceive it as one way, some people perceive it as another way. And I am entirely against religious persecution. I think that if you are religious, great. As long as you're not being a dick about it, it's absolutely fine.
Like, very true, yeah.
Don't shove it down my throat or whatever, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be persuaded into believing in a religion because, well, I'm pretty set in my ways in that I believe that whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
But it definitely can be used as something for people to go, you're not right, or you're not me, you're not a person because you believe this kind of thing, or you're not the right kind of person because you believe this sort of thing. And we've got to be very careful with religion in that sense, because it can be very much a dividing force. And I think, as Jack said, it comes down to education on that point of educating people that, extremism is a very, very bad thing that has to be avoided at all costs. And we've seen it in some schools in Birmingham actually, where Islamic extremist schools, weren't they? They were teaching a very, very perverse form of Islam that was very, very anti everybody who wasn't Islamic, and that's a very dangerous thing to be teaching kids, because it means that they're in the developing stages of their life. You tell them stuff like that, they're going to believe it for a long, long time. It takes a lot of persuading to get someone out of that mindset. So I think we need to look at the education system when it comes to religion very carefully as well. But I've spoken for long enough. I'll let you guys speak on that.
Well, like Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. I mean, people will interpret what they are taught, and we interpret something differently, but I think you have to be taught in a very unbiased way, which is an issue which, again, is not so unbiased in this country. It's quite a biased system. We have a very liberal education system that is reflected through the teaching, which encourages left-wing views, which is something that thwarts the ideology of the meaning of religion. It's a minefield out there, it really is, and we see it a lot with Israel and Palestine. It's the world comes together, and it's, do you support Israel or Palestine? And that is the big force, because that is the modern issue of the world, really. Who do you support? Whose side do you want? Well, actually, shouldn't there be a solution to solve both sides? I mean, I definitely support Israel. I think that Palestine and Israel need to get together and sort each other's differences out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, Israel has been approached Palestine and sort of Palestinian leadership, as it were, on numerous occasions and asked for peace. And every time they've sort of been turned down. That's as far as I know. But I'm not the most educated person on the topic. I have an opinion on it, but I'm not the most educated, so I'm not going to spout all my bollocks all over that. But in that situation, you can see how religion can be such a dividing thing, because what's the difference between Palestinians and the Israelis? It's just religion. Obviously, there's some ethnic differences in there due to the Israelis being majority Jewish and, that sort of stuff. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's people versus people, and it's more on what they believe in than their ethnicity, which is what they're fighting for.
Exactly, yes.
And it's a land dispute as well, but it's got such a religious driving force behind that something that could be sorted out with simple diplomacy is becoming a really heated issue in the area. And it's leading to a lot of people, unfortunately, losing their lives. A lot of Israelis, a lot of Palestinians. It's just a lot of unneeded bloodshed on both sides, and it really does need to be stopped. But how do you stop something like that? Because unless you enforce religious persecution, it's very, very difficult to get people to come out of that mindset.
That was quite a big issue in the recent elections in Israel, the general election, where it talked about seizing land in the what's it called, Golan Heights in Israel, and when they talked about it, and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, said that he was going to seize land, and that caused a bit of an outcry in the very left wing for the world. The right didn't really comment on it, but it is an issue of, it's everyone's land, really, at the end of the day. The issue surrounding Israel is an issue that I think Britain created. We do have our hand in that, on that table, definitely. I just think that the situation's been blown out of control by sides unwilling to negotiate.
Yes, 100%.
So, I mean, it was Britain's problem back then, but we have tried to sort a lot of it. But unfortunately, now that Israel is a free state, they can't.
I think the whole conflict boils down to this.
Yeah.
If Palestine, if the Palestinians, if Hezbollah, whatever it is, the fighting arm of the Palestinians, lay down their arms tomorrow, peace. If Israel lay down their arms tomorrow, by the end of next week it would cease to exist. Because
very true, extremely true. That
the thing with Israel that's holding them back, apart from basic morals and a good legal system, is that they're a UN recognised country. They're held by UN's international standards, where if they commit an atrocity, they fucking pay for it, and they will pay for it if they do. Obviously,
very true.
There have been some situations where people have called them out, and they have done some shitty things. I'm not denying that at all. But compared to like terror attacks, for example, on civilian, on like mostly, if not all, civilian areas, Hezbollah outweighs them hugely on that scale, because Hezbollah have been committing atrocities against the Israelis for donkey's years now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an issue of trying to unify. I mean, the Arabs do have a lot of free land, so I mean, they could make some exceptions there. I just think it needs to be. It's an issue of. I was here first. I owned it, but then it's we need the land for the Jews, and obviously the Jews do originate from that area, but we need to not divide it, but make it intertwined.
Yeah. Well, our country is a fantastic example of sort of just different people coming to one sort of cool society. Because to be honest with you, Britain's pretty cool. Britain's a very, very good example of all religions, all races, all creeds coming together, and we actually get along very well. In fact, we're one of the best countries. We're one of the most multicultural countries in the world.
And that will, we will be talking about that in a bit as well. And I think on that note, we should end this section about religion, fact or fiction, and go into the cultural changes that are affecting the modern world and their pros and cons, really. I mean, if I could start with this one. Pro or con, Carl?
Sorry?
Pro, has it been a force for good or a force for bad, or are you a bit in the middle?
On what, sorry?
On the issue of cultural changes.
Well, obviously, cultural change from things like slavery, racial persecution, sexual persecution, like sexism and racism and like religionisms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Moving away from them is a fantastic thing. It's a force for good.
Carl, you're a right winger. You're not supposed to say
that. Oh, I know. I'm a filthy alt-righter. But obviously, that's been a fantastic force for good, and it's made And you can see the statistics that having a freer and more equal society improves economics, improves happiness among the population. But then there is a but. We've reached a level now where, like, statistical outliers are becoming major sources of contention, and they really don't need to be. So, for example, the gender wage gap is a very, very contentious topic.
Yes, it is, definitely.
The statistic that's always quoted is 77 cents to the dollar in America. Not too sure what it is in Britain, but you reach that figure by taking the median, or is it the median or the mean? I think it was the median earnings of men. It was the mean earnings of men versus the mean earnings of women. All across everything, that's all that's taken into account is gender and amount paid in a year.
Yeah.
Which is an extraordinarily unfair way of looking at it, because it takes into account none of the other socioeconomic details at all. And if you're going to base such a huge movement as like this whole gender equality, this sort of new age gender equality movement on a statistic like that, it's going to get very messy, and it has gotten very messy because you've ended up with a very contentious issue on something that doesn't need to be contentious. It's illegal to pay a woman less than a man for the same work.
It has been since 1970 in this country.
Exactly, it has been illegal for a long time. If someone's doing that, you go to the law, you sue them, you take whatever necessary legal action, right? But if there's a male co-worker who works longer hours, has a job with a different sort of same job with a different like set of skills needed for the same job. So, for example, with the railway, this is the sort of stuff I know. That's sort of my area of expertise. There is a female who works at Paignton called Laura. She's lovely. She works in the ticket office. And
nice pussy.
I don't know, mate. To be honest with you,
I'd get to that.
I wouldn't know. Right? But hear me out. And she earns less than my friend Jimmy who works there. And they both do the same job. They both work in the ticket office. And you say, look at Jimmy. He's earning more than she.
Yeah.
Cull him, execute all of the managers which he'd want, hang him, burn him, massive row on Twitter. and then you say, no, look at it. He's working longer hours on average because Laura's got a kid, he doesn't. He does dispatch as well, so he's specialised in another sort of area. So that's another thing to add to it. But if you just looked at their pay and say, oh, they do the same job, it looks unfair. But when you actually look into the more detailed version of it, you say, oh, actually, that makes sense. Like, he's doing technically more work than she is, and he's getting paid for it, which is fair.
This is where the issue arises of the current Conservative government's policy to make all major companies hand in their gender pay gap, where there isn't one. They've sort of done this a bit too quickly, and they've called in companies and they're pointing them out. But at the end of the day, you're probably going to say I'm a bit right-wing about this, but at the end of the day, it's up to companies how much they pay their staff. As long as they're paying someone for their work, as long as they're doing it in a fair way, it doesn't matter whether they're just being paid on the breadline. It's something that needs to be realised, that people need to be paid properly, but we mustn't pressure companies to go. We mustn't say, oh, I don't know, such and such isn't paying that well. Well, do you know what we haven't looked into is they do a better pension than any other company. They get sick pay, they get maternity pay. This is factors that we don't look into and we sort of skip over. And we just have a go at companies. So they have more men on their staff. It's like recently EasyJet said that they want by 2050 all their cabin crew pilots to be 50-50 men and women. And somebody commented, I can't remember the fellow's name, but he said that that wouldn't work because what you're doing is you're forcing diversity. If someone's good enough for the job, they'll get it. But if you're forcing someone to get a job because of their gender or ethnicity, that causes a problem because you're compromising on ability to perform in the role.
Exactly. You can't. The worst, the most suicidal move a company can make is, in the pursuit of equality of outcome, destroying equality of opportunity. Because equality of opportunity is actual equality. That's where it matters. Because if you have equality of opportunity, you are a freer person. Like that's how it works. You can't quote freedom of outcome and say, oh yeah, this is having 50-50 is full equality, because no, it isn't. Because how did you get there? You go, oh well, we had gender segregated assessment days, and we had assessment days where my local police force, the Devon Cornwall Police Force, had more interview days, like interview like occasions, and more times you could head there and say, yes, I'd like to be a police officer, get a little bit of training. They tell you what the job's like. They had, like, what was it, 30% more of them for women than they did for men, and they segregated them by sex. They didn't have mixed ones; they segregated them by sex because they want to tick boxes. They want more female police officers. And you look at that and you go, well, hang on, that's inequality. That's sexual persecution. That's actual sexism.
This is the argument, as you may be aware, of the Defence Secretary, former Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson's been sacked, and they've replaced him with Penny Mordaunt, who is the current Minister for Women and Equality. And the Department of Women and Equality, why don't they just call it the Minister for Equality? Why does it have to be Women and Equality? That's not very equal. And again, Theresa May is very much pushing this. We're going to have the first woman Secretary of State for defence and blah, 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 where actually she sacked someone who is calling for an investigation and is saying that he was wrongly accused. I think this is something that Theresa May's forcing through. She's forcing it through because people are so obsessed with trying to get equality now that they'll compromise on absolutely everything possible, every aspect of society and government to achieve this, and it's just not sustainable. It will cause major problems. Sometimes, do you know what? The man's best for the job. But that's not always the case, is it? Sometimes a woman's better for a job. Sometimes it doesn't really matter as race, but at the end of the day, I think there's too much emphasis on this. It will come naturally. It's just, you have to remember that 95% of people in Britain are white British.
Yeah.
We have more men in this country than women. So there isn't going to be a complete balance. Women may not want to do that role. There was an article a few months ago, and it was saying that most women do not want to do the jobs that are made out to be lacking in equality. A bit like, say, a train driver, that's not really appealing to a woman bringing up trains, Kyle. I mean, there are surely women drivers out there, but most are men because it appeals to men, and that's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. Teaching appeals to women. I mean, you could say 50% of teachers need to be male by 2030. I mean, it's not going to solve the education problem. It's just going to make somebody in an office somewhere look good.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got 2 points to make here. First of all, from a personal point of view, right, I was nearly not given my job because the company needed to tick a box for my apprenticeship. Everybody doing my apprenticeship in the West region is a male. Everybody's male.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be like that, though. I was not meant to get my job. I was the second choice. The first choice for me was a female, and that's fair enough. If she's better at the job if she was better in the interviews and everything than me, that was fine. But she wasn't, and I know she wasn't because I saw the point sheets that they basically they give you a point, they make a point sheet when you go for the interview.
Yeah.
And they take out different points for you. I scored 88 points on my interview. She scored 68.
I see.
But yet she was going to get the job first because she was the female, and I even asked the the recruiting manager for my apprenticeship, like, why was she going to get the job? And he looked at me and he went, look, don't tell like many people this, and I'd rather this didn't get out. But it's the simple reason of we are going to get an absolute seeing to this year because we haven't got a single woman, or anybody, because we're all white as well. You're all white. You're all white cisgendered male.
Jeez, that's the big sin now, Kyle.
Yeah, exactly. You know? But why should that matter? We were all, everybody else apart from me.
You were all qualified.
Were chosen because they're the highest points, and that should be how it is. If you're the best suited for the job, you should get the job. Simple as. It's literally as simple as saying that. And yet people are saying that, oh yeah, but you got to take into account that, oh, what? But women are oppressed, black people are oppressed. So fucking what? If they're not as good for a job as someone else, they're not as good for a job as someone else. You should choose who's best.
You should never compromise on ability. This is where it goes back to a few months ago. There was a man who applied. He was a white, straight man who applied for Cheshire Police.
Yeah.
And they basically turned around to him in the interview and said, no, we're not giving you the job. You basically scored something like 98%, something really high, but they said they weren't giving him the job because he was a male and he was white. And
Jesus.
But anyway, they were taken to court by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, and they lost. And it annoys me the fact that this country is mostly has a white population. I mean, we should always give black people the job when they are able to do so. But at the end of the day, the workforce is not going to be bang 50% black, 50% white, 50% male and female. It just doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
It's annoying that people cannot see past that, and I think this will cause issues in the future because what the issue is now is the government's trying to force equality, and it's causing companies to take drastic measures, and they're completely blindsided by the fact that they're discriminating by trying not to discriminate.
Yeah.
And I'm against discrimination, but what I'm saying is it's not discriminatory to go, do you know what, you've got a good interview here, but I'm going to employ that man there because he did a better job than you. But do you know what, you did a good job anyway, but not good enough. It drives me up the wall. This country is going towards a brick wall, and it will happen very quickly.
Yeah.
I just don't feel I feel there will be a problem with trying to find work for white people in the future. I mean,
we're already seeing it.
Oh yeah, we're seeing it now, and the government is not helpful at all. I think the government is too distracted by Brexit trying to people please and slapping all these silly mandates and regulations that haven't been properly researched and are catering to extremists at the end of the day. I use that word quite tightly. But they are extremists. They're people who do not see the facts and realise that it just doesn't work that way. Yeah. Anyway, I think enough of that subject. That was cultural change.
I have one more point.
Take it far away.
So, right. The amount of male drivers, the amount of female drivers, disproportionately male, right? So our company went on an absolute fucking manhunt for women drivers this year because we had a massive recruitment drive for drivers this year.
Yeah.
And they went, right, yeah, we want women drivers, right? We want to have more women, and they went out of their way to make sure that it was women drivers that were employed, and a huge amount of very up to the job males were just went, no, you're not a female, and now everybody's like, that's very unfair, but it happened. And the women got the jobs, and now a lot of the women are going out there, right? But it's now getting to the point where it's actually been dangerous. It's actually put the public in danger because I would be called a sexist for saying this in public in front of someone, right? But so there's an incident on the railway that's absolutely fucking feared. It's called SPAD, a signal passed at danger. You know how the signal system works.
Oh yes, there was an incident back in before privatisation of British Rail, wasn't there? The Paddington incident.
Yeah. There's been loads and loads of accidents that have happened due to SPAD, right?
Yeah.
They're one of the worst things a driver can do, signal pass at danger, right? Because you can kill people so easily, and so many people do it. And it's massively frowned upon. The rate of SPADs in this newest recruitment wave has been unmatched by any other recruitment wave, because they've employed so many people that have been mediocre or poor, choices for the job. But this hasn't been published. This isn't being put anywhere. I was on a train that spadded the other day, and it was actually terrifying, because, well, you can tell when you're spadded because the train just locks the brakes and you go flying or whatever, and it's very scary.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing to experience. It's happening more and more often with this newer wave of drivers. And, this isn't saying it's because the women are worse drivers. It's because because obviously that's just not true. It depends on your training, depends on your natural ability or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're going to employ people who are physically not capable or are just not as good for the job as, other people, but you're choosing them based on sex, you're going to end up with a fucking bloodbath on your hands. And I don't think my company's ready for the absolute shit show that they're going to receive when this eventually happens. Because we are, without being a fearmonger, we are looking at a potentially extraordinarily fatal and horrendous accident happening in the next few months due to this driver wave, because they are just they're just poorly managed, mate. They're just poor
going
poor
possibility. So for this recruitment drive, then how many women drivers did they employ compared to men?
It was 80-20. It was 80-20 women.
80-20 women? You're kidding, right?
No.
That's ridiculous, that. Oh, bloody hell, that's not quality.
No.
I mean, 50-50, they are compromising on ability. I mean, I don't know all the facts, but it sounds like they're compromising on ability, and it's quite sad to hear. Anyway, moving on to our final topic, that was cultural changes and its effect on modern Britain and the world. Our final topic this evening is colonialism.
I've got a meme
is it a good or a bad thing? Tom? Lyle? What do you think?
Check general, boys. There's a meme for us. Good meme to start us off.
Yeah, that's a good starting position.
Right, okie dokie. Colonialism, right. Kyle, Tom, what do you think?
Well, I'll let Tom. Tom, you haven't spoken much today, so I'll let you go.
I have not.
You do history, Tom?
Yeah, I do. I feel the way colonialism was dealt with, and how, because of the attitudes and how everyone, I say that, white people behaved towards people like the native people of wherever they were invading, let's say. I feel like it is frowned upon, and it should be frowned upon, because of the way that it was executed and how we did it. But I also feel like colonialism is extremely beneficial for the places that have been taken over, because they become more technologically advanced, and technology follows the countries that are invading, and they become a better country. But it's just the way that we handled it is shit.
I mean, definitely, we did set up governments over there. We improved the education and medical systems, national development, and we did bring a lot of modern luxuries, modern standards to the colonies. There were atrocities committed during the colonies. There was one in India, I can't remember its name. It featured in the film Gandhi, though, and that was quite bad when we shot a lot of Indian people. That was quite sad. But at the end of the day, we did bring a lot of positives to colonies. I believe we did make them better places. We shouldn't look at it as it was all positive. There were a lot of negatives, such as we took a lot of natural resources from their land. We did a lot of destruction to their cultures. There was a bit of racism.
A
bit, maybe a bit more than. But it's just, we have to remember that at the the end of the day, a lot of these countries, without being crude, would still be throwing rocks at each other if we didn't go over there and sort it out.
Well, this is the thing. You're not allowed to exist. You're not allowed to You're not allowed to say in this day and age is, however much we persecuted people, however much we were dicks, we were fucking knobheads to people, right?
Yeah.
Would Africa, would the African continent, would India, would those areas be in the same level of technological advancement, and would they be as modern now if we hadn't gone over there and tried to install Western beliefs and sort of all that gubbins? The answer is probably no. I am in no way defending the actions of the fucking horrendous actions of the people who went over there. They plundered, they raped, and they burned their way through Africa.
I think the issue,
but at the same time, the last thing we should do is pay reparations or anything like that, or at least feel guilty.
Yeah.
For our ancestors, because at the end of the day, I wasn't there. I have fuck all to do with Africa, right? I'm a 17-year-old lad living in 2019. What do I have to do with the colonization of Africa or the persecution of the blacks in the 1800s in like Middle America? I had nothing to do with it. So why on earth should I be forced to pay reparations for something like that? Which is what a lot of people have been propagating, is that we should be somehow feel guilty for something that we never actually had a part in.
This was something that was brought up very recently during the Easter Sunday attacks in Sri Lanka. There was an issue of, does Britain hold back on supporting Christians because of colonial guilt? And I was thinking to myself, at the end of the day, yes, there were some bad things, but we shouldn't feel bad about this now. We need to move on. We need to look at it as, yeah, there were some bad things, but it did bring a lot of positive stuff. We need to move on. Britain, we need to stop holding back on the little tiny things. We need to protect what we set up. I mean, what annoys me is when we look at countries that are going downhill, have self-governed but been corrupted. So I look at South Africa. That was a brilliant example of a colony, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I mean when we ran it, we weren't very nice, but we did set up a good government, and afterwards there was a very good government for a bit, and then unfortunately we had the apartheid. But then the apartheid stopped, and that was a self-governing act. But now South Africa's full of corruption.
On this one. I can weigh in. I have done this for a year.
When did the apartheid start? Because there was a gap, wasn't there?
The National Party were elected in 1948, and like reformations came in almost instantly. And I think it was the 1950s, early 1950s, where apartheid really took shape.
I see. Because, I mean, the apartheid is something in South Africa which was a consequence of colonialism, but I think that was we set up a government. I think that was an issue of we set up a very well working government, a very good government that would function, but some not very good people got in there. And I wouldn't say that they were all bad. I would just mean that sometimes there were issues that were not dealt with properly. But would you say, Tom, and this is an important question, would you say that it's more a reverse apartheid now, with blacks prosecuting white people in South
Africa? I wouldn't call it
not
that specific
apartheid, because that's a bit too extreme. I also wouldn't say, I've heard about the stuff in South Africa. I wouldn't say as extreme as what happened to African people in South Africa, but at the same time, it's not what Nelson Mandela wanted, and he wanted equality for all. Like, there was two factions in the fight against apartheid, which was the ANC, which is Nelson Mandela, and they wanted equality for all. And then there was the PAC, the Pan-Africanist Congress or something like that, and they wanted Africa for the Africans, and they were more like discrediting towards white people and whatever. So I feel like they've gone against the ANC and what Nelson Mandela wanted, and how hard all of them worked for it, and have revert to a more PAC, more like tribal form of dealing with their problems.
Yeah. I mean, Nelson Mandela had a good view of South Africa. His vision for South Africa was an interesting one, but it's sad that it was not put in place fast enough. And I think that this was an issue where Nelson Mandela wasn't president for long enough, because he was the first state president, well, the first president such, because before then it was state president, and then became obviously a republic. I think the issue is that it's just he wasn't there for long enough to give it a shot. He could have had it. South Africa would have been a great country if Nelson Mandela was still in charge. I think some bad people got in, and I think at the end of the day, some white people in South Africa have done some bad stuff, but they shouldn't be punished for it now. You just forget your differences, don't you? That's like the black people turning around again, we're going to punish white people for slavery. It's like, why? It's like, it's not my fault. You know, I wasn't there cracking the whip.
Bet you wish you were. I'm kidding.
What can I say? All a bit of fun.
Gotta love it. It's just BDSM. It's just BDSM.
BDSM, what's that?
Non-consensual BDSM. Is that a serious question, Jake?
That is a serious question.
Right,
you know,
After this recording, we can show you a website.
I worry now. I'm really worried. Yeah. Anyway, back on the issue of colonialism.
Do you know what BDSM is?
I really don't know what BDSM is. No.
Hold on, let's get the actual definition. Ooh.
Anyway, going back to colonialism, yeah, I think South Africa is an example of a country which had so much potential but was let down by corruption in post-colonial life. I think a lot of countries have set themselves. I mean, India is a great example of a country that set itself up after post-colonial life. They have such a good functioning government. I mean, it's a real, and they have a very democratic election. We did do a lot of good, but I think there were issues where bad sections came in, and I think colonialism is something that's been an issue that drives for nationalism now. We all want to protect our national identity, and I think the idea that people will come over here, take it, makes people fear. I mean, I like other cultures, but I want my culture to be the same as it is now. I mean, we've got quite a big, rich culture in this country, and other countries do as well, but it's sometimes good to intertwine our lives but separate our cultures. So have a culture that is show, but it's not damaging, and it's not interfering in the way that we interact with people across the world.
Yeah. Tom, you're right there.
I'm drinking.
Anyway, I think we should. Does anyone have anything else to add on to that?
Fuck Labour.
Yeah. Corbyn, big gay.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a very good day.
The tits off you all.
I was about to say evening, but by the time this comes out, it'll be a day. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. Good night.
Good night, guys.
Just so you know, BDSM stands for bondage and shit. Hold on.
Yes.
My master's gonna beat me. I don't know it. Bondage and discipline, dominance and submission. BDSM. And sadism and matricism.
Masochism.
Fuck it. That one. I'm just gonna put the microphone to my neck while I drink, and then we can just close it on that, yeah?
Oh god.
Okay. Anyway, that was quite good this evening. I think.
Right. Okay.
That was
Right.
the worst thing I've heard.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Really. Bye bye. Right. See you.
Hey guys, so I'm just going to add on to this. Basically, before we started recording the actual podcast, I hit record and then went to go get a drink and go to the toilet. So this is just a story from Kyle and Jack having a conversation while I was gone. So I thought it was a decent conversation, so I thought I'd add it in. Alright guys, thank you.
I had a bit of a fucking mare today.
What happened?
We were on our way back from Westbury on the train,
Yeah.
checking tickets, and I was walking past the toilets, and I heard and heard like a big squelch,
Yeah.
and I was like, what the fuck? So I looked down, and the floor was wet.
Yeah.
I was like, why the fuck's the floor wet? And then I sort of like looked a bit further around, I was like, fuck me, the floor's soaking.
Oh jeez.
And I was like, what's going on? And then I realised, I'm by the toilet. So I opened the toilet door, boom! Like, loads of water flooded out. And I was like, what the fuck? The fucking water tank, right, for the sink. Because basically, the water that used to flush the toilet and put in the sink is the same water.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the tank for the stuff that goes, like, into the sink and then down the drain is smaller than the actual tank that holds all the water. So it is possible to overflow, right, the sink tank.
Yeah.
But usually that should just drain off onto the track because there's an emergency thing. But because the train we were on was so new, they hadn't unplugged that. So it had backed up into the cupboard, flooded all over the floor, filled the actual floor of the toilet to about 2 inches of water, which all, when I opened the door, flooded out. And then I opened the door to the other toilet. The other toilet had done it as well, and I was like, "Oh no, this is a real issue now."
Yeah.
Turns out that the water overflow from the main tank into the sink tank had been left open by someone in maintenance. So we were inundated with water in our train, and like there was water pouring out of like the doors when we opened the doors at Tiverton.
Yeah.
And we were like, we can't have this, so we had to disconnect that. We had to disconnect. So it was in 2 5-car sections.
Yeah.
We had to disconnect that 5-car section because it was literally flooding.
Oh jeez.
So yeah, that was a fucking nightmare. And we couldn't isolate it either because whenever you opened the cupboard door, you were just blasted in the face by a massive tidal wave of water that was coming out at a rate of like so much psi. It was ridiculous.
That must have taken up a lot of your day then.
Well,
it's not a nice job.
No, I felt like a fucking plumber at one point because I had this like tiki and I was reaching into a cupboard with my sleeves down, desperately trying to turn the water off.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, that was a weird experience.
Yeah, somebody's going to be getting the blame for that this evening.
Yeah, someone in fucking maintenance is about to get their absolute head smashed in.
Yes. Oh jeez.
Yeah, man, it was bad.
We done.
Right, okay.
It is a bit laggy at times. I'm not. Could we just have like a long, drawn-out noise from both of you? That sounds good. Jack. That was long.
Wait a minute. I don't know what to do.
Just go Yeah, that cut out for me. Did it cut out for you, Kyle?
No.
No.
It cut out for me.
Right. So, religion, fact or fiction, colonialism, and cultural changes. Right, I'll introduce us, should I?
Wait, what's the other one we're doing?
We're doing religion, fact or fiction, colonialism, and cultural changes.
Okay.
Right, when are we starting to record?
We've been recording the whole time you've been talking about, I don't know, train toilets or whatever.
Alright, so you're going to edit that bit out?
I mean...
You can upload that as a fucking optional extra, me talk about a bog.
That can be on our Patreon.
Right, should I start?
Sure.